Hey everyone, welcome back. If you've been around the channel, you know I had a tough time with helicopters in DCS. I went from crashing all the time to barely being able to hover. But here is the wild part. Learning to fly helicopters didn't just make me better at flying them. It also made me a better fixed-wing pilot. Today I'll show you how with real examples from my journey. Before we dive in, I just want to say, this is based on my personal experience. It might not work the same way for everyone, so keep that in mind. But one thing that never changes is this. If you want to be good at something, you have to put in the hours. There's no shortcut to proficiency. Practice is the key. Remember that and you'll be just fine. First up, helicopters taught me to be smooth with my controls. When flying a jet, you can get away with rough movements. You can roll hard or pull back fast when landing, and most of the time, the jet handles it. But in a helicopter, every move counts. You can't just yank the stick. You need to be smooth and controlled. I remember my first flights in the OH-6 Cayuse. I was trying to hover, but each time I moved the cyclic, the helicopter would jump in a random direction. It felt like balancing on a ball while the ground shook. But after hours of practice, things changed. My movements got lighter, and finally, I could hover without chasing the controls. When I switched it back to jets, the difference was huge. My landings were smooth. I would approach the runway, make the same gentle inputs, and instead of a rough landing, I would glide in. I noticed it even more during air-to-air refueling. Those tiny, precise adjustments I learned in helicopters were perfect for staying steady behind the tanker. Now let's talk about energy management. In jets, you manage speed and altitude. But in helicopters, you also manage collective torque and rotor RPMs. I learned this the hard way. I was in a hover, needed to climb fast, and pulled too much collective without watching my torque. I spun out, crashed, and turned into a smoldering wreck on the runway. After that, I focused on how each control affected the helicopter's energy. I practiced smooth climbs, controlled descents, and emergency maneuvers. When I switched it back to jets, my dogfighting skills really improved a lot. I wasn't bleeding energy as much in turns. I think it's because flying helicopters made me more sensitive to how much I pull or push on the stick. Now I tend to manage my energy better when entering a one-circle or two-circle fight. I can't prove it scientifically, but I've noticed my win rate against AI opponents in dogfights has definitely improved. Another big lesson I learned from flying helicopters was situational awareness. When you're flying jets, you're usually high above the terrain, focusing on instruments, targets, or airborne threats. But helicopters, they keep you low and close to the action. Down here, every tree, building, and power line is a potential hazard. At first, I struggled to keep track of everything. While trying to hover or maneuver, my views get stuck to an instrument or stays in one direction, only focusing on my instruments or the immediate flight path. But helicopters demand constant environmental awareness. You're not just managing the aircraft. You're scanning rooftops, checking for obstacles, and making sure you don't drift too close to danger. Over time, this habit became second nature. I found myself naturally checking for surroundings more often, glancing at terrain, identifying threats, and planning escape routes. And when I switched back to jets, this awareness didn't go away. Whether flying low-level strikes, dogfighting in the mountains, or even landing on a crowded airfield, I was more mindful of my environment. Helicopters forced me to develop a new level of awareness that I never had before. Now, I don't just focus on the target or the instruments. I try to see the whole picture. And that makes me a better, safer, and more effective pilot. Key takeaway: learning helicopters forces you to develop a lighter, more precise touch with your controls. That directly translates to better landings, smoother refueling, and more efficient maneuvering in jets. In short, flying helicopters makes you a more precise and efficient pilot overall. I believe precision control is the foundation for every fixed-wing pilot, whether in props or jets. And while I still have a long way to go in both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, this journey has made me a much more capable virtual pilot. Of course, keep in mind that you don't need to learn helicopters first to be a great sim pilot. This is just my personal experience. So if you mainly fly jets in DCS or have lost some interest in the game, why not try helicopters? Who knows, it might just reignite that spark. They are fun and might just make you a better pilot as well. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe. And as always, fly safe out there. I'll see you in the skies.